What's up, guys? Welcome to A Reseller's Life. My name is Chris. Thank you so much for joining me. This is part of my Reseller Spotlight series where I talk to my favorite resellers, ask them about tips, tricks, and try to figure out how they plan their day so that we can, get their best practices. So today we have Leslie. Thank you so much for joining us. Why don't you tell people where they can find you on social media first and then where you live?
Hi, I'm Leslie Tucker, and you can find me at A Reseller's Passion everywhere on social media. I live in the state of Delaware, but I hail from Philly. Yay.
Awesome. So let's talk about what do you sell and what platforms do you focus on?
I sell mostly clothing,
Mhm.
and I focus on Poshmark and Etsy primarily. I sell a little bit on Macari. I started off on eBay, but it was a little overwhelming for me. And so I stick with Poshmark and Etsy primarily, yes. And more shoes these days than anything else because they're easy to box and ship and
Mhm.
photograph. And on Etsy, I sell a lot of vintage items. I sell a lot of clothes,
Mhm.
but I'm also moving into games and I have albums and comics and things like that. I really like that platform for the vintage.
So I really like what you're doing because on top of Etsy and Poshmark, you also have a podcast, which is great because you can get your voice out in the community, and you also have a couple digital products.
Mhm.
So how do you balance all these different projects with your time? Can you give us like a day in the life? What's it look like?
Sure. I definitely calendar my life. I have a content calendar that I use for social media and all of my projects like YouTube and my podcast. And I also have a big calendar that I use to calendar in any of my interviews, like today with Chris, any of my interviews on my podcast, any things that I need to do around the house. I write down daily lists. Every single day, I write about 10 goals that I need to accomplish, try to focus on the top five, and then move the unfinished projects to the next day. And that's basically how I keep focus. So for my content calendar, I have things that I do daily, which is kind of post on Instagram, post a little bit on Twitter, maybe post a little bit on LinkedIn. And then I have weekly projects that I do that I take care of. So, like, putting out 2 YouTube videos a week and making sure I have another brand that I just started. So I try to make sure I can focus on that as well. And also taking care of all of the things that I'm doing, digital products. I'm back doing some handmade products. I used to be a handmade seller on Etsy, so I'm trying to get back into some things for peace of mind, but also they make me money, so that's pretty cool.
And you also have two girls.
No, we have way more than that,
Oh, yeah,
Chris.
more than that.
My husband and I have a blended family of 10 children.
Wow.
Yes,
Okay.
I have five, he had five, and when
Okay.
we got married, we had 10 children. At one time, six lived home, and we have an 18-year-old, which is his daughter. She lives with her mom. And then home with us is we have a 17-year-old and a 22-year-old.
Wow.
Everyone else is out there. My son's in the army, and all of our girls doing some different things.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
So this is great because as far as the chores and responsibilities at home, are those visible? How do you manage all the different things that need to get done?
Oh, that's a really good question. When my children were growing up, I made sure that they learned how to do things early.
Mm.
Not more so because I grew up in a really strict household, and my mother made sure we had chores, and I did the same thing for my children. I had five, so I couldn't take care of everything myself. So by the time they were 8 years old, they were basically independent. So I
Mm.
created a list, which was like a calendar, and everyone knew what their chores were for the day. And there are no boy chores, there are no girl chores. Everyone puts out the trash, everyone washes dishes, everyone knows how to cook a complete meal. They know how to start reading recipes by the time they were 10. And
Wow.
so it's really run really smoothly like that. They come home every day from school when they were home, and they go right to their chore list and they knew what needed to be accomplished.
And they're assigned this.
Yes, they're definitely assigned. Like my son is Craig, so Craig would have, every day someone had a chore. So maybe Monday would be Craig's dishes, and then Tuesday Craig's trash, and then Stacy have a chore, and Stephanie, and Sonia, and so on. Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. I just listened to another family say that everything is assigned, but if you see it not done, you just do it.
Yes.
And that mentality, everyone is helping other people complete tasks, and you don't want to be the person that doesn't do anything.
Yeah,
Everyone will notice.
exactly.
So that's great. Oh, so that's a lot of stuff. So I love it. So then, you do you take your to do list and then add it to your calendar? Is that how the day gets
I
planned?
don't. I'm like a really visual person like I carry a clipboard around with me all day long, Chris.
Hmm.
And so I have a piece of paper that is my to-do list for the day. And then
Yeah.
I kind of have like I got to put it in half. So just in case I want to write some extra notes on things that I want to remember. But that clipboard stays with me. The calendar is for things like maybe future things. Like I had to
Hmm.
calendar us in, I calendar the podcast. So the things that are daily, I have to have them kind of close to me. Plus, I'm getting a little older, so my memory isn't as good as it used to be. So I like to have things like visual.
And then, do you have overarching goals for reselling, or each of these projects have a separate goal?
So yeah, each project is a separate goal. Reselling, to be honest, really reselling isn't even the top of my focus these days because I'm adding so many things.
Hmm.
Like us all, because of what we're going through lately, we want to try to find some things to one balance us, but then also what if reselling doesn't work out? I need
Hmm.
something else to fall on, right? So I started creating more things on the other side to make sure that I have an income coming in. So with reselling, I make sure I do list and photograph. I have a couple days a week that I do that. I don't list every day. I don't photograph every day because it becomes too much. I kind of have it down to a system when I know on what platform I need, what work needs to be done. And then I focus on the other things that I know that will bring me residual income.
Do you look at it as like, a block of time? Like maybe reselling gets 10 hours a week, content gets 5 hours a week. Do you? It sounds like you work in blocks of
Yeah.
time, which makes
Yep.
sense.
Yeah, I definitely do. In the beginning, when I started reselling, I didn't because I didn't have any idea what I was doing.
Hmm.
Once I became a full time seller, I kind of had to work like we work on a job. You have a goal for today that has to be accomplished. So that's what I started doing with reselling. When I did source, I'm not sourcing now because I'm in the house, but when I did source, it would be like one day a week or one day every 2 weeks. And then I would photograph everything and list and then break everything out, like list 5 or 10 a day. And that helps me. So then it allows me to have the rest of the day to accomplish some other goals, spend time with my husband, spend time with my girls, do some things that I want to do.
See, this is the exact model that I think everyone should do. I'm biased, but I love the 50 to 100 items a week. Do
Mm-hmm.
the best you can,
Yeah.
and then spend the rest of your time working on potentially replenishables, or maybe make your own products,
Mm-hmm.
stuff that can be sold more than one time. And
Definitely.
that's all sometimes 6 months of upfront work before you make any money. And then, but those can continue to earn money. But then also, you don't want to only work on those because then you'll have a cash flow problem.
Exactly.
So
Yeah,
that's really smart.
definitely agree.
So let's talk about distractions. You seem pretty, and I'm also from a strict background family wise. What distractions could you remove, or what gets in the way of you getting stuff done?
Um, in the beginning, I had to really, really stay focused because I know I could be distracted by anything because when you first come home you don't have an idea of what your schedule is going to be. You're used to going to a job, so you know that schedule, but now you're home, you have to really figure out what's going to work. So I had to play around and figure out what worked for me. I really worked like 60 to 80 hours a week. I mean, like no sleep and everything. So now I allow myself 2 days off a week. Some people don't. And when I say that I allow myself time off, I may like lay in the bed, sit in my favorite chair, do a little bit on social media, and then I'm done for the day. And then I read or watch some movies and things like that. So I am really strict on my time during the day. With my children home, they're not babies. My youngest daughter is 17, and she's used to going to high school and working and everything. And so now she's getting bored. So I have to put a sign on my door to remind people that I'm still working within a certain amount of hours. And then I say, okay, by 5, you have my time. So I have to stay on track. And it also helps me get things done. The the challenge of the world is a lot of people's lives are changing for them, but in terms of work, nothing has changed for me.
Mm.
So that's the cool thing is that I'm home and I can stay focused and keep my calendar going. And then if I want to take a day off, I'll take a day off.
Do you have a dedicated working area?
I do. I'm in it now. I have when two of our girls moved out, I turned a bedroom into my office, so everything's in here, as you can see behind me.
And so you literally put a sign on the door?
Yeah, it's a sign on my door now. It's a big red sign, and to let people know that either I'm working or like now it says that I am interviewing. So
That's
because I
amazing.
run my podcast out
That's
here,
that's
yes.
so
Mhm.
obvious. And I think that especially children,
Mhm.
if you don't do that, they have no idea what the division is.
Yes. It was my
That
daughter's idea because I was putting a white piece of paper on the door and she would knock because it's like one knock come in and I'm saying I'm doing something and
mhm.
she says, Mom, you need a dark piece of paper, so it's a big bold red piece of paper on the door. Yeah.
Smart. Kids say it as it is. I also like the 2 days off, and your 2 days off are active rest.
Yes.
They're not lounging necessarily, reading,
Right.
catching up. And I think that when you look at successful anything, they always have space.
Yes.
You can't cram everything back to back to back to back to back. It's not productive.
Definitely. But you get
Sounds
tired.
productive.
Your mind and body gets tired as well. Your body tells you when you need to rest.
So let's talk about obstacles potentially. It could be time, energy, it could be knowledge, skills, resources, space. What kind of things are obstacles for you? How do you look at that?
Well, one, I'm a little bit older. I'll be 51 this year.
Hmm.
So I have to really do like exercise to keep my mind alert. And that's
Hmm.
one of the reasons why I do the podcast. I tell people that all the time because it keeps me alert. It keeps me just like you're asking me questions to ask people questions and be involved in it. I need things to keep my mind focused. And then also, I'm getting back onto an exercise routine. You have to take care of your body and eat right because if you don't, you're not going to be healthy and you won't have any energy. Time wise, I don't have a problem with time right now. I just kind of get, on days concerned about what we're going through and sometimes worrying about my children because they're older. You worry about them more sometimes. But
Hmm.
I don't really have a lot of obstacles. I love the fact that we have the internet because you can literally learn anything that you want.
Hmm.
So my goal in this time that we're having a challenge as the world is to learn some new things, learn a
Hmm.
new language. My daughter gave me a camera, a Nikon. I need to learn how to use that, so I'm going to be studying that and putting my crafts out there a little bit more. So that's pretty cool with this social media world and this internet that the sky is basically the limit there.
This is, always in these interviews, I always talk about my favorite tip. And this is an incredible tip. So I'm just going to preemptively guess this is my favorite, but you might come up with something even better. But the idea of staying sharp, I think, is important. Especially as you get older. I
Mhm.
consider myself still relatively young,
Mhm.
but as you get older, you accumulate things. You accumulate kids, projects, responsibilities, and you need more and more organization. And you mentioned five things that keep people sharp, which are community. If
Mhm.
you belong or you have family, you mentioned problem solving, figuring out something new. It's also learning skills. You mentioned exercise. You mentioned diet. Those are the main things. And if it's like not one, it's almost like if you don't do all of them, stuff starts getting dull,
Right.
and you notice fog.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
it's very active. I love it because it's like resting but still doing.
Exactly. Exactly. That's
So
what I
let
tell people often because when I say like, "Oh, I'm off," there's so many people that don't want to take time off. But
hmm
then, are you being productive? You
hmm
know,
and
is
you
your
can't
mind clear?
reflect.
Yeah, you definitely can't.
So let's talk about maybe a really good sale or a high profit item that you sold that excites you, or maybe a cool reseller story like that.
I don't sell like a lot of high profit because I want to say that I fell into reselling accidentally
Hmm.
because my husband's a reseller. He's been doing it for years, and he was already a retired firefighter when I met him. And so I wanted something that we could do together while I was going to work and he was home. We were kind of two ships passing in the night. So I just said, "Can you teach me what you're doing?" And he did. And I learned enough that, you know what, maybe I can do that. I can come home because I'm stressing at my job. So in the beginning, I wasn't sourcing, I wasn't doing anything. He was still bringing me stuff and I would just sell it, Chris.
Mm.
And so, yes, so I kind of had to like figure out for a year, I didn't source anything. And Thomas was focusing more on like men's things. You know, he's an eBay seller and Carhartt and all that stuff. So I just said, bring me some women's things. And whatever he bought me, I would sell. So I didn't get a grasp of it until I knew that I could take this thing serious. So I've only been serious about it for about 2 years. So I still have a challenge kind of finding the right item, you know. So
What is your background before reselling?
I am in food service. So
Mm,
I'm a professional baker by trade. I've been baking for more than 20 years. In the city of Philadelphia, I worked in several cafes. I even owned my own dessert business where I focused on vegan
wow.
and free desserts. And when I moved here to Delaware, there wasn't a lot of opportunity. So the last job that I had for 5 years, I was a lunch lady. And then the last 2 years, I was a supervising lunch lady. So the stress was crazy, high school students and things like that. So I enjoyed it. So I am ServSafe certified. I believe in keeping a certification for something to fall back on. So I can go work in any cafe or restaurant with no problem. Yeah, I was a cook, line cook. I did all that for many years. And I love food. I still have a dessert. I still make desserts for friends who want to buy them. You know, so I have a lot going on. But my biggest sell to date, my of someone who lives locally. She's actually considered the Delaware blogger in Philly. In Delaware. She's pretty famous. And she called me up one day and she said, "Oh, I have some stuff I want to give you. I'm moving out of my house." And I said, "Okay, great. I'll take them." So she comes over with a car full of stuff and she gives me all this stuff. She doesn't, so she's like, "I don't want any money. I'm just getting rich." I just happened to see a post where you're like a reseller. How did I not know that after 5 years? And she bought me all this stuff. And in the things that she bought me were these brand new Christian Louis Vuitton shoes.
Mm,
And I didn't know anything about them, so I had to really do my research to make sure they were real, authentic. And I sold them for $275. Like
wow.
I could have got more money probably,
Hmm.
but after doing the research and everything, and they were free. I paid nothing for them, so I think that was
Mm.
probably like my best flip because I paid no money for it.
And there's so much good stuff in there. One,
Mhm.
food service. My parents owned a restaurant. How does reselling compare to food service?
There's no comparison.
I
Hard
know.
work.
There's no,
It's
yeah,
hard work. People don't
yeah.
think reselling is hard work. It's hard work. I've had a lot of friends because they've heard me say that when I was leaving my job. "Oh, you're leaving your job. Why are you leaving your job?" I'm like, "Well, I haven't been here long enough. I'm not vested like pension wise because I hadn't been there as long as my coworkers." And so they couldn't understand why I was leaving. What is it that you're doing that you're leaving? And I said, "Well, I'm going to be selling people's junk."
Hmm.
Basically. But what they didn't know, Chris, was I had a plan before I left my job. I didn't just walk away. Thomas and I sat down, I saved, I opened up 2 bank accounts, I put an emergency account aside. I put in the work. I turned my 6 month plan into a 3 month plan and was able to come home. And
Wow.
so my coworker, so when we broke for the summer, that's when I worked and worked and worked. I opened up 2 eBay stores and I really kicked butt and sold and sold. And I hit my goal. And I talked to Thomas and said, "I'm ready to come home." He said, "Come on home." So when I sent in my letter of resignation, my coworkers were like, "You're doing what?" They were contacting me and I'm like, "It's no drama. I'm just, going to work." But to answer your question, it's just hard work. What I miss about food service is really kind of like the people. That's when you're home. It's like you're already isolated. Even if
Mm.
we weren't isolated, it was
Hmm.
isolating. So I had to go out and find a community, and I found that through the reseller community.
That is amazing. You had a plan to leave work.
Yes.
And for me, reselling, I always get in trouble because I say it's way easier than some jobs
Yeah.
because and I call it standing on the shoulders of people because when you sell something, somebody spent 20 years making that brand valuable
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah.
And so you just found somebody's hard work and added a little more of your hard work and it turned
Mhm.
into a business. And also the the emergency account gives you some peace of mind, and also the separate bank accounts. Those are all valuable tips for people who are getting started. So
Yeah.
let's go back with the knowledge you have now. What would you do differently if you were starting from scratch today?
What I would do differently, I would source on my own. That's what I would do instead of having Thomas source for me. And I would also really check the value and comping a little bit more. My comps, I didn't do that. Basic beginner. challenges. So I would definitely, before I leave the store, sometimes as women, and I'm pretty sure men too, we go out and, oh, this is cute, I'm going to sell it. You go get it, and you don't really look at the value of it, the quality. You just go and look at the quantity. So now I check all my comps before I walk out of wherever I purchase my items from, whether I'm getting it from someone or if I'm going to a thrift store or something like that, to make
Mhm.
sure that I can get a good, return of my income, what I put out. So that's really important to me, is checking comps, making sure my photos are on point so that there aren't a lot of questions, and making sure I put as much information in my descriptions that I can, and having a really nice like storefront. We, as I tell people, it's virtual, so people cannot touch
Mhm.
the things that we touch. They don't know the quality. We have to like pretend that we're really telling them a story about what the item is so that they can really visualize it within themselves, and then just provide the best customer service, which I've always been customer service oriented and not take anything serious, because it's a business. It really is.
I feel like it should be required that people work in the restaurant industry as like part of your education, because you meet angry customers, you learn customer service, and plus you have to be humble or you
Yeah.
won't be able to get through the day because it's you're serving.
Yeah. And
So,
that's what I tell people all the time. I take customer service that I learned many years from working, and I turn it now. Just we happen to just be on the other side in a virtual world, but it's still customer service. So when your customer comes at you, you can't show them attitude. You still just have to humble yourself and just show customer service. Let them vent. They probably had a bad day, something's going on, they gave you a bad review. Why turn that around? Just provide the best customer service. Because I've met some people, just like you said, you're dealing with people money. I worked in a high school, angry students, angry parents,
mhm.
all kinds of different things that I had to deal with every single day.
So
So,
let's talk about your workflow. Let's say I were to come help you for 10 hours. What would you have me do? Would you,
so
yeah.
I would probably have you start off by completing my shipping for the day.
Mm,
And my shipping is really easy. I have my office is set up where I use a regular printer. I haven't evolved to like a Rolo or anything at this point. I just get like, since I do a lot of shipping on Poshmark, I use the USPS free shipping labels.
mhm,
So everything is at a glance. All my packaging, all my boxes, my inventory is so that anyone in my house or anyone off the street can come in and pull that item out of inventory and ship it off. So that would be the first thing I would have you do. And the second thing probably would be photographs and things. I have things already on a rack. As we were talking about, I work in batches, so I source, and however I treat it, I'll probably steam some items. Everything's on a rack, and it's kind of sorted in terms of what I want to photograph for a certain amount of days. So I would say just go photograph 5 things. You can take them right off the rack, and my photo studio is right next to the rack. So you can go, there's a hook, I have lighting, and you can take the photos right there.
do you
And
have all this stuff written down
I
somewhere?
don't have it written down, but that's a really good idea. I should probably write it down. I wrote it down in the book though.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to talk about because you have a guide.
Yes.
So what is in it?
So it's called the Reseller Survival Guide, and it's
Hmm.
practical advice for resellers. And basically, it does speak to the new reseller, but seasoned resellers can get a lot from it also. It just basically selling from beginning to end. First, why would you sell? Going from a person who just heard about an app and they just want to get rid of some things from their house.
Hmm.
I talk about that. And then I talk about, okay, now you've sold everything in your house. Stop there. Do you want to get serious about this thing? So I break down what, sorry, my fan is kind of,
No worries.
so I break down the next step, and I talk about how hard it is and how serious you need to be. I talk about how you want to source, where you could probably source from, what platforms you could probably sell on, and I break down the differences between like eBay, Mercari, Poshmark, and all those. So I really kind of get in depth for if a new person was picking it up, it would be like, wow. I talk about how to create a schedule, how to create a budget, who should file taxes, when they should file taxes. I talk about what to do to prepare to become a full-time reseller, and I
Mhm.
call it preparing for life. You should be already doing these things. You
Hmm.
shouldn't be preparing to be a reseller, because now look at where we are. So if you're already prepared that if anything happens, you're ready for it. And then I talk about if you do want to become a full-time reseller, think of, really consider it 3, 6, however many months. I talk about talking to your significant other. I talk to, I sat down with my husband. I didn't just say, oh, I'm coming home. And just a lot. And I say it's practical advice. And it's just a lot of practical advice. It's from like my perspective. And I talk about that all the time. Anything that I talk about is my perspective. You can take it or not. And then I give you templates, like little templates with like little circles for if you're listing, you can keep track of your listing, keep track of your inventory, keep track of your costs, just a lot of different things like that in it. Yeah.
That's powerful because, for everyone, you're gonna have to develop your own system.
Yeah.
So when you start, you have dedicated areas for photos, for working, for making content. You have the sign. This is really good because I think that you're 70. I read in many books that 70% of what you do every day is automatic.
Yeah.
If you spend some time setting up what you do, you're just going to do it without even thinking if you
Yeah.
set it up properly. And that really is going to help people. And also, all of that is valuable advice. I'll put that in a link below so people can check it out. Um, let's talk about your superpowers. And actually, this might be an odd question, but if Thomas were to describe your skills and your advantages and how you run your business, how would he describe you?
Of how I run my business. So I run my business practically the same way I run like everything in my life. I'm
Hmm.
pretty like laid back, and I treat my business respectfully as I treat people, by devoting as much time as I need, almost like just having a love affair with my business, really, because I'm starting to enjoy it. So I put a lot of love into it, a lot of love into my packaging, a lot of time and the things that I develop, the relationships that I built within the community. And he's been with me to different events, so he will say I'm the same person at home that I am when I get around people. So just a lot of love is what he would probably say I would
That's
put it.
amazing. And that it shows how you do anything is how you do everything. And absolutely putting that love and the energy into your reselling, your customers can tell even if they're at home. It
Exactly.
reminds me of this a quote by my friend Teresa Cox. Maybe you know her. She said, describe items as if they can't see it, and then photograph items as if you can't describe it.
It's pretty
Then you get both best of both worlds. People get into it. So now I'm going to ask you a question. If I were to give you $1,000 for sourcing, how would you spend it, and where would
um
you spend it?
the first I would source shoes and more shoes.
Hmm.
um I'm not like I see you do sneakers. I'm not really big on sneakers, and I would probably source on shoes and vintage items. I
Hmm.
have a lot of great mom and pop stores around here where
Hmm.
you can get the money goes as donations, so their prices aren't high at all, and I come out with a lot of quality vintage items. And I don't do a lot of retail arbitrage, but I have a lot of resources around here that I would use the money on. But the top answer would be shoes, regardless of where I went.
Awesome. So now I saved the hardest question for the end. What's the one thing you could do right now that would improve your reselling business the most? So if you put your focus on this for, let's say, a whole day or two, what would change your business the
That's
most?
a really hard question, Chris. If the hardest thing I could do for my reselling business right now, probably get more, I wouldn't say quality items, but probably higher end items
Hmm.
that haven't been easy to obtain here in my area. Maybe source a little bit more online and get some quality items for my business that will bring me a better return.
That's a great answer because increasing your average selling price means the same amount of work but more profit. And that is hard.
Yeah.
You'll see people in the middle of Nebraska that have a $200 average sale price because they spent years learning how to find it somewhere else, right? Or you could be in an area where a wealthy neighborhood and you go to one rummage sale and you're good for the year. So it just depends on your how you approach it. I love that. Um, I want to commend you for stepping out and starting your own business on top of just the fact that you can support yourself.
Mhm.
It's also your own gig, which
Yeah.
is very powerful. And I'm inspired because you also produce content on your podcast and you're active on Instagram. So, is there anything else you'd like to share with my audience?
No, what I want to tell people is just, diversify your income. It's really important. We're going through tough times right now, and that's the reason you should have thought about that then. So you can't take that back. Start thinking now and really focusing on one or two things that you're really good at. You never know what they're turning into. This is the time is now, and you can do it and accomplish. You want that residual income so that you can fall back on something. Reselling is not going to always be a given. We never know what's going to happen. So set yourself up for success in other areas.
So, my final thought on this is people are sometimes intimidated. You do a lot of different things, and I just heard a quote from Jack Dorsey, who runs Twitter and Square. So, he runs
Mhm.
two gigantic companies. How does he do it? And he has a motto that is start small. So, we
Yes.
have a gentleman that's running two gigantic companies, still thinking daily, okay, what's this little thing I can do
Mhm.
to tackle some crazy
Yeah.
project?
Yeah.
And it's the mentality, it's like a beginner's mind.
Yeah.
And I want
Yeah.
everybody to think like that. I
Yeah.
appreciate everyone's time. Leslie, before we take off, let's remind people where they can find you online
So you can find me at a reseller's passion. So you Google a reseller's passion. That's my podcast. That's my website. That's my Twitter. That's my Facebook. Reseller's
and your
passion.
Instagram. Yep.
Yes, and my
All right,
Instagram.
guys. Thank you so much for your time. We'll see you guys
Thanks,
next
Chris.
time. Make progress daily.